Speaking test instructions. The speaking test is 20 minutes. There are 8 tasks in the speaking test. Please try your best to answer all the questions.
Start speaking now. Time is up. 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 Start speaking now. Time is up.
Benjamin. This startup opportunity presents a classic risk-reward scenario that requires careful analysis rather than emotional decision-making. Nevertheless, the decision ultimately depends on your personal financial situation, risk tolerance, and career goals. First and foremost, evaluate the startup's viability by researching the founder's track record, the business model's sustainability, existing funding and runway, and realistic timeline for profitability or exit opportunities. Furthermore, equity in startups is only valuable if the company succeeds, and statistics show that most startups fail within the first 5 years, making equity compensation inherently risky compared to guaranteed salary. Additionally, calculate your minimum financial requirements including student loan payments, car payment, rent, and basic living expenses to determine whether the startup salary would cover these obligations or require dipping into savings. Moreover, consider your current life stage and responsibilities. Single people with minimal obligations have more flexibility to take risks than those with families, mortgages, or other significant financial commitments. Although the equity upside could potentially be life-changing if the startup succeeds, you need to honestly assess whether you can afford to take that gamble with your current debt obligations. Consequently, I'd recommend requesting detailed information about the equity percentage, vesting schedule, company valuation, and funding situation before making any decisions. Additionally, consider negotiating for a higher base salary that covers your essential expenses while accepting slightly less equity, creating a more balanced risk-reward scenario. You might also explore whether your current employer would match the equity offering or provide other incentives to retain you. Despite the excitement of startup culture and potential wealth, remember that financial stability and meeting your debt obligations should be your foundation for taking calculated career risks rather than desperate gambles. 2 years ago, I had to inform my team that our department was being restructured and 3 positions, including roles held by people I had worked closely with for years, were being eliminated. The company had given me only 48 hours notice before the mandatory announcement, which made the situation even more difficult. Furthermore, I knew these job losses would create significant financial and emotional hardship for the affected employees and their families. The prospect of delivering this news to colleagues who trusted me felt overwhelming and emotionally exhausting. Additionally, I struggled with guilt even though I had no role in the decision and had actually advocated against the restructuring in leadership meetings. To prepare for these conversations, I first ensured I had complete and accurate information about severance packages, benefits continuation, outplacement services, and timeline details so I could provide concrete answers to expected questions. Moreover, I practiced what I would say to balance honesty and empathy while avoiding giving false hope or making promises I couldn't keep about future opportunities. I also consulted with HR to ensure I followed proper protocols and had support resources available for employees. When delivering the news, I scheduled individual private meetings rather than announcing publicly, which allowed each person to process the information with dignity. I opened each conversation directly and clearly, stating the decision up front rather than building up to it, because I felt people deserved to know immediately rather than enduring prolonged anxiety. Additionally, I acknowledged the unfairness of the situation, expressed genuine regret, and listened to their reactions without becoming defensive or making excuses. Most importantly, I provided specific information about next steps and offered to serve as a reference and help with their job searches in any way possible. The conversations were emotionally difficult, But the affected employees later told me they appreciated the respectful, direct approach. This experience taught me that delivering bad news with honesty, empathy, and practical support is more compassionate than trying to soften the blow with vague language or false optimism. This heartwarming illustration depicts a multi-generational family gathering in a cozy kitchen during a Sunday afternoon cooking session, where various family members are collaborating to prepare a traditional homemade meal. The spacious kitchen features wooden cabinets, marble countertops, and stainless steel appliances, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere for culinary activities. In the center of the scene, a grandmother wearing a floral apron is demonstrating proper pasta making technique to her teenage granddaughter, who is attentively rolling dough on a flour-dusted cutting board. Meanwhile, the grandfather sits at the breakfast nook peeling vegetables into a large bowl, occasionally offering advice and sharing stories from his own childhood cooking experiences. On the left side, the father is stirring a bubbling pot of tomato sauce on the stovetop, periodically tasting and adjusting seasonings, while the mother arranges fresh herbs and ingredients she has just retrieved from the refrigerator. Additionally, 2 young children are standing on step stools at the counter, enthusiastically mixing ingredients in a glass bowl under careful adult supervision, their faces showing concentrated determination. The background reveals open cookbooks with splattered pages displaying family recipes, hanging copper pots and pans, and a window overlooking a backyard garden where fresh vegetables are growing. Furthermore, a golden retriever lies contentedly beneath the dining table, hoping for occasional dropped ingredients. What makes this domestic scene particularly meaningful is how it illustrates the transmission of culinary traditions across generations. Where cooking becomes more than meal preparation, it serves as a vehicle for family bonding, cultural preservation, and creating lasting memories through shared sensory experiences. Initially, the family will continue working together to complete their meal preparation, whereas the father will monitor the simmering sauce on the stove to ensure it doesn't burn. Subsequently, the teenage daughter will finish rolling out her dough and begin cutting it into appropriate shapes, while simultaneously, her mother will complete mixing ingredients in the large bowl for another dish. Meanwhile, the young children observing from their stools will presumably ask to participate more actively in the cooking process, and consequently, the adults might assign them age-appropriate tasks like washing vegetables or arranging ingredients. Furthermore, the grandfather will likely share traditional family recipes and cooking techniques with the younger generations, thereby preserving culinary heritage. Despite the complexity of preparing multiple dishes simultaneously, this well-coordinated family maintains an organized workflow. Nevertheless, the kitchen might become messier before the final cleanup begins. In addition, the family dog resting peacefully beneath the table will eventually stir when delicious aromas intensify. In conclusion, this heartwarming multi-generational cooking session will culminate in a delicious homemade meal shared around the dining table, creating precious memories while teaching children valuable life skills and the importance of family traditions. Stephen, I understand your instinct to completely refuse permission for Olivia's tattoo, but I believe allowing her to get a tattoo with our supervision and guidance represents the most effective approach to this situation. First and foremost, Olivia will be legally able to get a tattoo in just 2 years anyway. And outright refusal now simply delays her decision rather than preventing it while potentially damaging our relationship through perceived lack of respect for her autonomy. Furthermore, by allowing the tattoo with our involvement, we can ensure she chooses a reputable, licensed artist who follows proper safety procedures rather than risking that she might seek an unsafe underground option or wait until 18 and make an impulsive decision without parental guidance. Additionally, our involvement in the process allows us to counsel her on placement, size, and design choices that are less likely to cause future regret, such as suggesting smaller designs in easily concealed locations rather than large visible tattoos. Moreover, this approach demonstrates trust in Olivia's judgment and treats her as a maturing young adult, capable of making permanent decisions with appropriate guidance, which strengthens our relationship during these challenging teenage years. Although tattoos are permanent and she might eventually regret this decision, consider that teenagers often find ways to assert independence, and allowing this supervised choice might actually prevent more dangerous or problematic rebellion later. Consequently, we could establish conditions such as requiring her to wait 3 months after choosing a design to ensure the decision isn't impulsive, researching artists together, and discussing long-term implications before proceeding. Despite the compromise option seeming reasonable, suggesting temporary alternatives might make Olivia feel dismissed and patronized, potentially leading to her getting a tattoo secretly when she turns 18 without any parental input. Don't you think guided permission builds more trust and responsibility than either dismissive alternatives or outright refusal? Stephen, while I appreciate your desire to maintain trust with Olivia through permission, I strongly believe that refusing permission for this tattoo represents the most responsible parental decision we can make. First and foremost, 16 is simply too young to make permanent body modification decisions that will affect Olivia's appearance and potentially her opportunities for the rest of her life. Furthermore, adolescent brains are still developing, particularly in areas related to long-term consequence evaluation and impulse control, making teenagers neurologically less equipped to make decisions with lifelong implications. Additionally, research consistently shows that tattoo regret rates are highest among people who got tattoos as teenagers, with many adults spending thousands of dollars on removal procedures for designs they chose during adolescence. Moreover, regardless of Olivia's current certainty about her design choice, her interests, values, and aesthetic preferences will almost certainly change dramatically over the next decade as she matures and develops her adult identity. Although refusing permission might temporarily strain our relationship, our job as parents is protecting Olivia from decisions that could negatively impact her future, even when that protection is temporarily unpopular. Consequently, we can explain that we're not questioning her judgment or autonomy, but rather acknowledging that permanent decisions deserve mature perspective that typically develops in one's 20s. Despite the supervised permission option seeming respectful of her autonomy, it still enables a permanent decision that she lacks the developmental maturity to fully evaluate. The compromise option of temporary alternatives, while potentially seeming dismissive, actually respects both her desire for self-expression and our parental wisdom about timing for permanent modifications. Additionally, visible tattoos can still affect employment opportunities in certain professional fields, and waiting until she's established her career direction provides better context for making informed decisions. Don't you think protecting Olivia from potential lifelong regret is more important than avoiding temporary conflict over this request? Ryan, I need to have a serious conversation with you about your living situation here and the concerns your aunt and I have about your recent behavior. First and foremost, I want you to know that we care about you deeply and opened our home because we want to support your education and success during college. Nevertheless, the disrespectful behavior, repeated violations of house rules, and extremely late arrivals home have created tension in our household that cannot continue. Furthermore, when we agreed to have you live here, we established clear expectations about curfews, communication, guest policies, and contributing to household responsibilities that you've consistently ignored despite multiple conversations. Additionally, your behavior is affecting not just our relationship with you, but also our marriage and our ability to maintain peace in our own home, which is simply not acceptable. Moreover, your aunt and I have our own children watching your behavior and seeing that rules apparently don't apply to you, which creates problematic examples and undermines our parenting authority. Although I understand that college life involves social activities and independence, living in someone else's home requires respecting their rules and showing gratitude for the financial and personal support being provided. Consequently, I need to give you a final, clear warning. Starting immediately, you must follow all house rules we've established. Communicate respectfully with your aunt and me. Come home by agreed upon times, and contribute to household responsibilities as expected. Additionally, any further violations will result in you needing to find alternative living arrangements within 2 weeks, regardless of the financial implications for you or your parents. Despite my love for you and my brother's difficult financial situation, I cannot continue sacrificing my family's well-being and home environment. This is your choice. Demonstrate respect and follow rules, or find somewhere else to live. Do you understand these expectations and are you committed to changing your behavior? Tom, I need to talk with you about Ryan's living situation, and I know this conversation will be difficult given your financial circumstances. First and foremost, I want you to know that I love you and I opened my home to Ryan because family helps family during challenging times. Nevertheless, Ryan's behavior over the past several months has become increasingly disrespectful and problematic, creating serious tension in my household that I can no longer tolerate. Furthermore, despite multiple conversations with Ryan about house rules, curfews, and respectful behavior, he continues to violate agreements and treat our home like a hotel rather than showing appreciation for the support we're providing. Additionally, this situation is affecting my marriage, as my spouse has reached the limit of patience with Ryan's behavior and feels that our own family's peace and well-being should take priority over continued accommodation of someone who shows no respect for our household. Moreover, while I understand your financial situation makes alternative housing difficult, I cannot continue sacrificing my family's harmony and my marriage over Ryan's refusal to follow basic expectations of respect and responsibility. Although I feel terrible about the financial burden this creates for you, consider that allowing Ryan to continue living with us under these circumstances is actually enabling his disrespectful behavior and teaching him that actions don't have consequences. Consequently, I need Ryan to move out within the next month so you have time to make alternative arrangements. Whether that means him getting a part-time job to afford shared housing, taking out student loans for on-campus housing, or making sacrifices in your own budget to support him differently. Despite my love for you and desire to help, my first obligation is to my spouse and children, and I cannot continue this arrangement that's damaging my marriage and home environment. I hope you understand that this decision comes from necessity rather than lack of care for you or Ryan. Restaurants should be legally required to display calorie counts on menus, as this policy provides valuable information that helps consumers make informed choices about their health without significantly burdening businesses. First and foremost, many people significantly underestimate the caloric content of restaurant meals, which contributes to obesity and related health problems that affect both individual well-being and public healthcare costs. Furthermore, Calorie information empowers consumers to make educated decisions aligned with their dietary goals. Whether that's weight management, athletic training, or managing medical conditions like diabetes. Additionally, nutrition transparency encourages restaurants to offer healthier menu options and potentially reformulate existing items to be more nutritious when they realize how their offerings compare to competitors. Moreover, chain restaurants already calculate nutritional information for standardization and quality control purposes, making the additional step of displaying this information relatively minimal in terms of cost and effort. Nevertheless, I recognize some legitimate concerns about implementation details and effects on smaller establishments. Consequently, calorie posting requirements might be limited to chain restaurants with multiple locations rather than burdening small independent restaurants with complex nutritional analysis costs. Additionally, calorie counts should be displayed in ways that don't dominate menu design or shame diners. Perhaps including ranges for customizable items and noting that calorie needs vary by individual. Some critics argue that calorie posting could trigger unhealthy behaviors in people with eating disorders or that most diners ignore nutritional information anyway. However, research shows that a significant percentage of consumers use calorie information when available. And providing information doesn't force anyone to use it. It simply enables informed choice for those who want it. Therefore, mandatory calorie posting represents reasonable public health policy that balances individual freedom with transparency and informed decision-making while imposing minimal burden on businesses already tracking this information. Tom, you won't believe what I just saw at Martinez Music House downtown. While helping my son Jake look for guitar picks, I stumbled upon the most extraordinary electric guitar I've ever encountered in my life. This instrument has been custom designed to look like a tree, with the body carved and painted to resemble actual tree bark, complete with realistic texture and coloring. What makes this absolutely incredible is how the neck extends upward like a branch. And instead of traditional fret markers, they've used small carved birds and leaves as position indicators. Furthermore, the headstock is shaped like tree roots spreading outward, and each tuning peg is disguised as a tiny acorn with functional brass hardware. Not only is the visual design phenomenal, but when the store manager demonstrated it for us, the sound quality was absolutely pristine with rich, warm tones that you'd expect from a high-end custom instrument. The pickup covers are even designed to look like tree knots, seamlessly integrating the electronic components into the natural aesthetic. Unfortunately, the store doesn't allow any photography of their rare or custom pieces to prevent unauthorized reproductions. Given your expertise in unique instruments and the fact that you've been talking about expanding your guitar collection with something truly one of a kind, I immediately thought of you. The price tag is substantial, but considering the craftsmanship and the fact that it's a fully functional professional grade instrument, it might actually be worth the investment. What's your take on guitars that prioritize artistic design alongside musical performance?